Charles Coves, Australasia's passion provocateur, and welcome to this week's show, whether you're watching on Rumble or YouTube or listening via one of the many podcasting platforms. This is your place to be inspired to live a life of passion that is guided by your ever-increasing self-awareness about who you are and what you want your life to be. Passion is a source of unlimited energy from your soul, your spirit, your heart that enables you to produce extraordinary results, extraordinary. And one of the great mantras that I have embraced is that greatness can only be achieved through passion. So why wouldn't you live a passionate life? Don't you want to have a great life? So this week I want to talk to you about productivity, because in Australia, in America, in UK, Western countries, there's always this ongoing conversation about productivity, a nation's productivity. In Australia particularly, because that's where Julie and I live, but it's replicated around the world. You know, politicians are saying we've got to maintain our productivity growth. Our productivity is slipping. And certainly in Australia, our living standards are slipping dramatically. And if you measure gross domestic product, which is a measure of productivity, gross domestic product as a total number, Australia's GDP is growing, but we've had a massive population increase from migration, totally contrary to what the people want. And this government is just going nuts, a bit like the Biden administration allowed large numbers, millions of people to come across the border. Well, the Australian government is doing the same thing. And whilst that might increase our GDP, we are technically in recession because we are actually, we're even worse. We are actually in recession because our GDP per capita has been dropping for a number of quarters, every 3 months. So GDP per capita is the proper test. So, you know, you think about what is the difference between improving living standards and deteriorating living standards. Well, I want to bring your mind to thinking very practically about high living standards versus low living standards. High living standards in the country versus low. Number one, the infrastructure around you is crumbling. Two simple examples of that: potholes in the roads. In Victoria and Australia are as bad as I've ever seen them in my life. And I've been driving now for, gosh, how many years? Well, I've been driving in cars for over 60 years. Well, I've been a passenger in cars. I'm driving in cars. So potholes as bad as they've ever been. And secondly, rubbish everywhere. Okay, when living standards are dropping, the local councils or the state governments don't clean up crap because it's not essential. You know, we're talking about the difference: high living standards, low living standards. Think about lower developed countries that you go to that are badly kept. It's a great example of of a lower living standard. Second example: people living in shitty, badly kept houses because they don't have the money to maintain the houses. It costs money to maintain your house in good shape. And you go to different suburbs in Melbourne, I'm sure where you live, there are richer suburbs, poorer suburbs. And those poorer suburbs are where people don't have pride in their home, can't look after it. But as a nation's productivity goes down, more and more people are unable to properly look after their homes. So just look around and see how well the maintenance of homes is happening in your area. Third practical example is a health system that's crumbling. So in lower developed countries, used to be called the third world, but more politically correct to call LDC, lower developed countries or poorer countries, the health system is nowhere near as good as what top level health service would look like. So, and let me assure you, in Victoria, our health service is crumbling. In Australia, our health service is crumbling. So there are three practical examples of lower living standards, how they impact on you day by day. Crap and potholes, shitty houses everywhere. And thirdly, you can't get in to get some elective surgery done unless you've got private health insurance, which of course is an expensive exercise. By the way, in poor countries, the elites, the so-called elites, the people with lots of money, they have no problems getting properly serviced, or they get onto a plane and go to the best hospitals in the world. So I say that a nation's productivity is a function of each person's individual productivity. And Australia's productivity is certainly going down the tubes, as are many Western countries. Personal, individual productivity is what, combined together, creates Australia's and your nation's GDP. So what do I mean by increasing productivity? Productivity is what you produce. In fact, it's the title of my book, Passionate People Produce. You might get a clue in all of this, that when you are passionate, you produce more. And trust me, that is the case. That's why I stopped being a lawyer, because I knew that passionate people produce more. So productivity growth is measured in two ways. You either for the same inputs, you increase your outputs, or secondly, for reduced inputs, you maintain the same outputs of goods and services. I say that again. For the same inputs, you increase your outputs, or you reduce your inputs and maintain the same outputs. The example I'll give you of reducing your inputs is labor costs. Machines enable reduced labor costs, human labor costs, to produce the same outputs. So that's what productivity means. You are producing. So why is Australia's and many nations' productivity dropping? Well, let me give you 9 very practical reasons, and I'll focus on you as a human being, because that helps you to understand. And as you are thinking about what I'm saying here, because I want to give you a solution to all of this, because there is a very clear solution. I want you to think about the people you know to whom these 9 productivity killers apply. Number 1, low personal energy. And personal energy drives productivity. That's why passionate people produce. If you have poor health, your productivity is down. That's why I totally admire Donald Trump's move on MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. I want to make Australia healthy again. That's why I'm involved in health. That's why I'm involved in industrial hemp. But if you have poor health, you will have poor productivity. Number 2, you have low energy because you are not passionate. And that's because most leaders in Australia do not know how to harness the passion of their people. They are passion killers. And I've done the research, and many of you know from past shows that I'm scathing about the quality of leadership in Australia and many countries because leaders are passion killers. They do not know how to unleash passion. And passion is a source of unlimited energy, as you've heard me say. Third, the third productivity killer. People are doing work that doesn't add value. They're doing work that doesn't matter. And I'm thinking here particularly of bureaucrats, of government pen pushers in local government, state government, federal government. Bureaucrats. And I put clearly here on the line that I have learned from 50 years in business that the number one goal of bureaucrats is to increase their number, is to make their role important. They have no sense of understanding the economic disadvantage of these bureaucrats. In Australia, recent data has shown that we are the most bureaucratized nation on the planet. How about that? Isn't that wonderful? Having all these pen pushers, doing stuff that doesn't matter, that doesn't add any value. And I call on every single bureaucrat to look into their hearts. They won't do it, but this is the solution. This is one of the solutions to it. Look into their hearts and say, I'm being paid $150,000. Am I adding more than $150,000 of value? And in very rare cases is that the case. In fact, I was at an event recently where a secretary of a federal government, people said how hard he works. This bloke, as a public servant that has no risk other than losing his job, he gets paid $900,000 for being a bloody pen pusher. Imagine that. $900,000. They say we have to pay that money because we won't get the best people. Have a look at the state of Australia. Have a look at the state of your nation. Fourthly, the attacks on the people of many nations from the jabs and the unwanted medical interventions that were imposed on them since March of 2020. That has had a profound impact on health. It's had a profound impact on people's mental capacity. So the capacity, the productive capacity of people has been damaged by the steps taken by governments around the world since March 2020. This number 5 killer of productivity, crap education. The quality of education over the last 30 years in many nations, and particularly in Australia, in most government schools, is getting worse and worse and worse. Crap education kills the desire of people to learn. Why would you want to learn if you go to school? You have a shitty time, it's a waste of time, it's boring, and you're getting all of this transgender crap thrown down your throat, and you're getting a welcome to country thrown down your throat as well, and you are also slowed down in your learning because of the incredible increase in unhealthy children because of the jabs that the children have had. And you go, wow, I wonder why these kids are coming out of school and they're not excited, inspired, motivated, passionate, enthusiastic. There might be something there. In fact, I'm telling you there is. Number 6. The overwhelming safety crap that is imposed in many Western countries. And the laughable example in Australia is the lollipop ladies. Yes, the lollipop ladies holding up these signs that says drive slowly when there's roadworks or building works. And these, and by the way, most of the time they're very attractive women, and there's quite a scam going on in Australia, and particularly in Victoria. I hardly see a lollipop lady who's not beautiful. This is a scam. These good-looking women get paid large amounts of money, but so do every person holding a lollipop, for standing there like stale bottles of crap, right, in the name of safety. And I say that in Australia and in many nations, safety is weaponised. It wasn't applied to the jabs that were imposed into people, but when it suits government, they pull all of these stunts on safety. And all this safety crap also applies to building codes and regulations in many countries and makes everything far more expensive. So you get a house built that's much more expensive than it needs to be in the name of safety. But when it suits the government, it doesn't give a rat's about safety. Another example of that is that there are over 100,000 synthetic chemicals that impact on your life. Less than 5% of them, I've done a show on this previously, less than 5% of these synthetic chemicals, not natural chemicals, have been tested for safety by government. Oh, we don't want to do that. Ah, yes, but we want to slow you down in the way that you drive because we don't want anybody dying. Or the crap that comes in the media, and I use the word crap a lot because I'm quite passionate about this topic of how individual productivity is killed by government decisions, and the weaponizing of safety is absolutely one of these decisions. And I think I lost my train of thought, but that doesn't matter. The 7th killer of productivity is lack of innovation. And that is because of two reasons. Number one, because innovation and creativity require brain power, and your brain uses more energy than any part of your body. And if you're not healthy, and if you've been damaged by medical interventions, that impacts on your ability to be innovative and creative. And secondly, you cannot be innovative and creative if you're scared of being punished for making mistakes. And our society in the West absolutely punishes people in most environments for not getting the right answer. And certainly government does that numerous times. They don't punish themselves, by the way. That doesn't count. The bureaucrats rarely get punished, but people in the private sector absolutely get punished. And so if you're scared of making mistakes and you're low on energy, that also drives low brain power. Our innovation suffers. Number 8, the Fair Work Commission in this country, the protection of employees at the expense of employers, and the scams that go on. I'm going to do a whole show about this. I have heard some horror stories of employees who rip the system off, and the Fair Work Commission supports this incredibly pathetic behaviour by employers ripping the system off. In other words, the Fair Work Commission takes the side of slack employees rather than going, what's the proper way to behave? Oh no, there's no such thing as proper way to behave. All of that, it kills productivity. So people in the workplace see that they don't have to perform, because if they get the sack for not performing, they will get a huge damages payout from the Fair Work Commission that is full of former trade union representatives. And then the 9th killer of productivity is people getting paid more than they deserve. Now, what I mean by that is, I touched on it with the bureaucrats. If you are in a job where you are being overpaid for the value that you add, you are a productivity killer. And I say that it's a personal responsibility of each one of us to go, do I deserve what I'm being paid? Am I adding sufficient value for this? And I say that most bureaucrats are not, but I also say there are people in the private sector who get paid massive amounts of money that are simply not worth it. They're not adding the value. They are filling places. And what happens is, in your heart of hearts, you know you're being overpaid. It kills your passion. It kills your enthusiasm. It kills your ability and desire to speak the truth. Because if the leader of the organisation says, well, who reckons they're not adding sufficient value, no one would speak up. No one would speak up. And this question of understanding what makes a vibrant, growing society is a function of people doing their bit. So the overall solution to all of this is to speak truth now. The solution to Australia's and any nation's productivity is to speak truth now every time you see it, when there is bullshit that gets in the way of sensible solutions. What is sensible? What is the common sense solution to many matters? And I'm a director of the Kids Foundation. Kids Foundation teaches kids how to take sensible risks. It's not about avoiding all risk. And that's why I mean the safety is weaponised. You know, we have to protect you from living your lives. This is such a drain, such a killer on what we as human beings are capable of. And so the economists who pontificate about productivity, start to read their words, put them in the context of your own life, and you go, yeah, I know I'm not being anywhere near as productive as I could be. Now, I'm in small business. We have a problem in many Western countries with the collusion of big business and government. And this serves government very well. And government is not being held to account by most big businesses. In fact, that's the classic definition of fascism, when big business and governments work together to screw small business and medium business and individuals. of one of the wonderful quotes on productivity that I've seen from many sources, but the one that I'm going to quote to you now is from Ronald Reagan, former president of the United States. He said, "Entrepreneurs and their small enterprises are responsible for almost all the economic growth in the United States." And I would say that's the case in Australia as well. It is small entrepreneurs, it's entrepreneurial business, innovative businesses that are the driver of productivity growth, not government. Government is a sucker of growth. And I want all of you to start pushing back against local government, state government, federal government, in whatever country you are in, and call out the bullshit. That's my message. Call out the crap when people are just getting paid and not adding anywhere near the value of what they're being paid. Otherwise, the living standards in your country will head down the tube, and I've already said what that means. What's the benefit for you of speaking the truth? It could be risky. That's right. That's what we call whistleblowers. It is risky. Me talking about this is risky. But if we don't take risks to improve our country, whatever country you're in, you will go on an inexorable productivity decline. One of them in the UK is the triple legal system that operates in the place. I talked about that in my last show. If you haven't watched it, check it out. All right. Time goes quickly when you're having fun, raising these issues about which I'm passionate. Because I often say to people, what value do you add in your organisation? For example, if you're the receptionist in a dental practice, great receptionists add such great value in many, many organisations, including dental practices. But understand the value that you add. And what that does, when you understand the value adding, it makes you feel good about you and enables you to go to your employer and say, hey, I can add more value by doing A, B, and C. But then if you're not looking after your health, you don't have the energy to do that. This is a virtuous circle. And then if your boss says, I'm not interested in your innovative ideas, that kills your passion. So most bosses kill that passion because they go, this is the way we do things. We can't do anything new. Therefore, you can't have productivity growth. Get it? I hope you do. So I hope today's show makes a beneficial difference to your life, a life that I believe is meant to be all that you're capable of making of it. Check out our websites, charlescovest.com, covest.com. Check out my books, Passionate People Produce Passionate Performance. If you want to get better in your life, contemplate executive coaching with me. If you want a better team that you lead, get in touch. We'll run a team building program. If you're new to the show, check out the foundational principles of the show and further background about me. Again, thanks for watching, listening. Have a wonderful week. Take some risks, make some mistakes, uncover your passion, live life on your terms. Enjoy the week, and I look forward to being back with you next week. Bye.